My husband has a childhood friend, both the same age. This friend had his wedding during infection 19 in 2020. Strict measures, you know the drill. At that time, we were living abroad, so crossing borders was nearly impossible. When he got the invite, we had only been together for a few months, so it was a fresh relationship. They invited him alone. I was working in an infection 19 ward and managed to get him across the border as a worker in a private car, about an 8-hour journey. And I also got him a PCR test 2 hours before departure. I mention this because the whole arrangement wasn't easy. He attended the wedding with a gift, stayed with his parents. Wedding was nearby. 4 years later, we were getting married in a chateau, about 4 hours from both my family and his, so halfway, and invited the friend along with his wife and child. They said they'd come and make a trip out of it, exploring the area. He was the only friend for whom we paid accommodation right at the venue, just like for family, $200,000 hotel. I was already struggling with this as we had agreed not to cover accommodation for friends. It's also worth noting that this friend is a teacher and the wedding was on a Saturday, a week before the end of the school year. A few days before the wedding, they called to say they wouldn't come because he didn't get leave for Monday, and it wasn't worth the trip for just a few days. We ended up paying for the room since it was too late to cancel. We didn't receive a gift or even a congratulatory card from them. Today they wrote saying they want to visit because they're going to an event in our city and would appreciate accommodation for them and his sister. I'm against it because I don't see a reason to take leave, pick them up from the train station and host them when I don't view them as friends anymore. No contact throughout the year, no birthday or name day wishes. My husband disagrees, saying it's his best friend and I'm preventing him from seeing him. Am I the jerk? Now for an update. Wow, I didn't expect so many responses. Most of you advised us to suggest a hotel for them and then meet up for dinner. I'll suggest this to my husband and let you know how it goes. To clarify a few things. 1. My husband's friend wouldn't have been fired if he decided to come to our wedding. It just would have been more challenging for him because he would have had to travel 4 hours on Saturday. The ceremony was at 4 p.m., as is customary here, followed by dinner and celebrating until morning, and then travel back around noon on Sunday. He didn't get leave because it was a week before the end of the school year. 2. I don't know his sister, and my husband knows her only briefly, from occasional meetings. 3. They RSVP'd yes, so we paid for and reserved the accommodation, but later called to say they couldn't come because they didn't have leave. 4. Where I'm from, it's customary to pay for everything for the guests. For example, I've noticed that if a bride wants bridesmaids, she typically pays for their dresses and accessories, though good friends often offer to pay for themselves to keep costs down. But it's not expected, so usually guests don't even ask about accommodation. They automatically expect it unless told otherwise. I don't think this is ideal as it creates various situations. 5. I didn't smuggle him across the border. We were both medical workers, but me in infection 19 ward, and one of the ways to cross the border was by transporting medical supplies, which happened every Friday. I was responsible for selecting people, and I listed him so he could go that weekend. He had to complete training and paperwork for this. Long story short, it required a lot of arrangements not only on my side, but also his side. Now for another update, I followed the advice of the majority of you. I suggested the idea to my husband, and although he was hesitant, he agreed. We called his friend and proposed that we reserve a hotel for them and then go out for dinner together. Unfortunately, we explained that we couldn't host them at our place because we are busier than we would like, but we would be very happy to see them and even visit them in their area or welcome them for dinner. The friend, however, seemed disappointed and hinted that they might not be able to see each other after all, since they would have to pay for a hotel and were unsure if they could afford restaurant expenses in our area, as it's a bit more expensive here. He said we would figure it out closer to the time, but I got the feeling that they might not end up meeting. My husband was a bit disappointed but didn't say much and doesn't want to talk about it anymore. I feel bad that he's sad about this, but I still believe that he can put his energy into people who truly appreciate how selfless and kind he is. I'm also very grateful for all the responses. Many comments made me see things differently. I will never stop him from seeing his friend. That was never an option. I will update you all when the trip happens. Thank you all very much. 3. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Tell your husband that he can host. He does the pre-visit cleaning, bed making, shopping, any cooking. Make sure there is a little breakfast each day, all the work. Your only responsibility is to be charming and friendly. When they leave, your husband strips the beds, washes the bedding and towels, remakes the beds, and puts the house into pre-visit order. See how eager he is to host then. Comment 2. Not the idiot, they aren't coming to visit you and your husband. They just want to use your home as a free Airbnb. Unfortunately, we're unable to host you at that time due to other commitments. We'd love to meet up for dinner one evening to catch up though, if possible. Can you let us know what days you're available? Now for the update, thank you all for your advice and support. So after our last update, things took an unexpected turn. A couple of days after we proposed the hotel and dinner idea, my husband received a call from his friend. He sounded quite upset and said he needed to talk to my husband in person. My husband agreed, and they arranged to meet up at a cafe near our place. I was curious but decided to give them space. When my husband returned, he looked troubled. He told me that his friend had revealed something shocking. Apparently, the reason they couldn't come to our wedding wasn't just about the leave from work. His friend confessed that he and his wife were going through a rough patch in their marriage at the time. They were on the brink of separation and didn't want to bring their issues to our happy occasion. They didn't share this earlier because they were embarrassed and didn't want to burden us with their problems. This revelation put us in a difficult position. On one hand, I felt a bit more understanding of their situation. On the other hand, it didn't change the fact that they had been distant and hadn't made much effort to stay in touch. My husband was torn. He felt guilty for being upset with his friend and wanted to support him, but he also felt hurt by the lack of communication. A couple of days later, my husband suggested that we invite them over for dinner at our place, despite my initial reservations. He felt that his friend needed support and that this could be a way to mend their friendship. I reluctantly agreed, wanting to support my husband. The dinner was set for the following Saturday. I spent the day preparing a nice meal, hoping that this gesture would help bridge the gap. When they arrived, the atmosphere was a bit tense at first. However, as the evening progressed, we started to relax. His friend and his wife opened up about their struggles, and it became clear that they were trying to rebuild their relationship. During the dinner, his friend mentioned that they were considering moving to our city for a fresh start. This was a surprise to us, and it made me wonder if they were hoping to rely on us for support during this transition. My husband seemed excited about the idea, but I had my reservations. I didn't want to become their crutch, especially given our own busy lives. After they left, my husband and I had a long conversation. He was hopeful that this move could be a positive change for his friend and that it might help them reconnect. I, on the other hand, was worried about the potential strain it could put on us. We agreed to take things one step at a time and see how it played out. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. My husband seemed more invested in his friend's problems than ever before, and it started to affect our relationship. We were arguing more, and I felt like I was competing for his attention. One evening, while my husband was out, I received a message from his friend's wife. She thanked me for the dinner and for being understanding. She also mentioned that she had something important to tell me, but didn't want to do it over the phone. We arranged to meet up for coffee the next day. When we met, she looked nervous. She confessed that the real reason they were considering moving to our city was because she had found a job opportunity here. She hadn't told her husband yet because she wasn't sure if he would be on board. She asked me to keep it a secret for now, which put me in a difficult position. I didn't want to lie to my husband, but I also didn't want to betray her trust. This secret weighed heavily on me. I felt like I was caught in the middle of their problems, and it was starting to affect my own relationship. I decided to talk to my husband about it, without revealing the specifics. I told him that I felt like we were getting too involved in their issues, and that it was starting to take a toll on us. He understood, but was still determined to help his friend. As the days went by, I noticed that my husband was spending more time with his friend, trying to support him through his marital issues. This left me feeling neglected and frustrated. I didn't want to be the bad guy, but I also didn't want our relationship to suffer because of someone else's problems. One evening, after another argument, I decided to confront my husband about the job opportunity. I told him that his friend's wife had confided in me and that I felt it was important for him to know. He was shocked and a bit hurt that I had kept it from him, but he understood why I did it. This revelation led to a serious conversation between my husband and his friend. They discussed the job opportunity and what it could mean for their family. His friend was initially upset that his wife hadn't told him, but he eventually saw it as a potential solution to their problems. In the end, they decided to move to our city. My husband and I agreed to support them, but we also set boundaries to ensure that our relationship wouldn't suffer. It was a challenging time, but it brought us closer together in the end. Thank you all for reading and for your support. Am I the idiot for telling my brother's girlfriend to get over herself and accept our close bond? 19 years old female, have a twin brother who I am very close to. Let's call him Jay. We hang out together a lot and I consider him to be one of my best friends. We became a lot closer during high school when we found out we were both bisexual. Making friends doesn't come easy to me, and I really only have 2 close friends. 3, if you count my best friend's childhood friend that hangs out with us sometimes. My twin is very social and has a bigger group of friends that he hangs out with all the time since most of them go to the same college. Last week when we were hanging out with some of our mutual friends from high school, one of them made a comment about my shirt, saying it looked like one my brother had in high school. I told her it was the same shirt and she gave me a kind of weird look. I brushed it off because I didn't think she meant anything by it. My brother and I sometimes share clothes because we have a similar enough style and are about the same height and build. For us, it just means we have a lot more clothing options. Yesterday, I ran into that same friend after one of my classes and we stopped to talk. My brother called me in the middle of our conversation to ask if I wanted food since he was ordering anyway. And before I hung up, I said, "Bye, I love you." He said it back and my friend gave me a strange look. She didn't say anything at first, but then when I asked her what was wrong, she said it was just strange that I said I love you to my brother. I laughed it off and asked her if she didn't say it to her siblings. She said no, because that was weird. I didn't know what to say, so I just left it there and told her I needed to go so I could meet Jay at home before he left for his friend's house since they were planning on hanging out. She then started talking about how weird our relationship was and how it wasn't normal for siblings to share clothes or say I love you, hug, hang out so much, or do any of the things we do, and how high school was weird since we were always together and talking to each other. She also brought up a comment I made in high school in response to a question about what I would do if my twin died. I said that I didn't think I could live without him because he was a part of me. This question was asked to another set of twins we were friends with, and they both had the same answer. The whole time she was going on, I just stared at her because I really couldn't believe what I was hearing. Eventually, she stopped and I just blurted out, "You know you should really stop watching so much corn." She was very embarrassed and went off at me for saying that. I just left and went home. I told Jay what happened and he just laughed at me while I felt like I was dying inside because I couldn't believe I said that. I asked my friends what they thought and they laughed at me and told me I'm not the jerk, but I still feel like I am. So am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I really don't think you are the butt. Saying I love you to family members is completely normal. And sharing clothes, I mean, if you have the same style and are the same size, why not? It makes sense. I think this girl was way over the top. I can see why it pissed you off, and I don't blame you for saying what you did. Comment 2. Not the idiot. I'm almost 40 and I say I love you to my siblings all the time. I have tween and teen kids, girls and boys, and they share their t-shirts all the time, even if they are way too big for the youngest. And there are a lot of twins in my family. 2 of my kids are twins. The bond between them is really strong. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, a lot has happened since then, and it's been a pretty intense week. After that awkward encounter with my friend, I couldn't shake off the weird feeling it left me with. I mean, I know my relationship with Jay is close, but I never thought it was something to be judged for. Anyway, I decided to just let it go and focus on my studies and hanging out with Jay and my other friends. A few days later, Jay and I were at a small get-together with some of his college friends. Everything was going fine until one of his friends, who I'll call M, made a comment about how Jay and I seemed more like a couple than siblings. I could feel my face turning red, and I noticed Jay's expression change too. M laughed it off, but it was clear that the comment had struck a nerve. Jay and I exchanged a look, and I could tell he was as uncomfortable as I was. Later that night, Jay and I talked about it. He admitted that he had been hearing similar comments from his friends for a while, but didn't want to bring it up because he thought it would upset me. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, confusion, and a bit of sadness. Why did people have to make something innocent into something weird? We decided to just be ourselves and not let other people's opinions affect our relationship. But things took a turn when Jay's girlfriend, who I'll call Elle, confronted him about our closeness. She had heard the comments too and was starting to feel insecure. Jay tried to reassure her, but she wasn't convinced. She even suggested that maybe we should spend less time together. This was a huge blow for both of us. Jay and I have always been each other's support system, and the thought of distancing ourselves was heartbreaking. Jay and I had a long talk that night. He was torn between his relationship with Elle and our bond. I could see how much it was affecting him, and it hurt me to see him in such a dilemma. We decided to take a risk and have an open conversation with Elle about our relationship. It was a gamble because it could either make things better or completely ruin Jay's relationship with her. The next day, we sat down with Elle and explained everything. We told her about our childhood, how we became closer during high school, and how much we relied on each other for support. We also made it clear that our relationship was purely platonic and that we had no romantic feelings for each other. Elle listened quietly, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She asked a lot of questions, and we answered them honestly. After what felt like hours, Elle finally spoke. She admitted that she had been feeling insecure because she didn't have a close relationship with her own siblings and didn't understand ours. She apologized for making assumptions and said she needed some time to process everything. Jay and I were relieved, but also anxious about what would happen next. In the following days, things were a bit tense. Elle was distant, and Jay was trying to give her space while also being there for me. It was a delicate balance, and I could see the strain it was putting on him. I felt guilty for being the cause of his stress, but Jay assured me that it wasn't my fault. Then something unexpected happened. Elle reached out to me and asked if we could talk. I was nervous but agreed. We met up at a coffee shop and she started by apologizing again. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking and realized that her insecurities were her own issues to deal with. She also said that she wanted to understand our relationship better and asked if we could start fresh. I was taken aback but also relieved. We talked for a long time and I could see that she was genuinely trying to make an effort. We even made plans to hang out together, just the two of us, to get to know each other better. It was a huge step, and I felt hopeful for the first time in days. As the week went on, things started to improve. Elle and I hung out a few times, and we actually got along pretty well. She even joined Jay and me for one of our movie nights, and it was surprisingly fun. Jay was thrilled to see us getting along, and I could see the relief on his face. Looking back, I realized that this whole situation had brought us all closer. Jay and I had always been close, but this experience made us appreciate our bond even more. It also helped me understand that not everyone would get our relationship, and that was okay. What mattered was that we knew the truth and were there for each other. So that's where things stand now. Jay and I are still as close as ever, and Elle has become a part of our little circle. It's not perfect, and there are still moments of tension, but we're working through it together. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to play Happy Family with my dad's mistress? My dad had an affair with my mom's supposed best friend, Cheryl. 3 years ago, Cheryl pulled me, 15-year-old male, aside and told me about the affair and that she wanted my help to make my siblings still love her when they found out. She was someone we were all close with. I'm the baby of the family and the favorite of everyone, which I don't see as true, but it's a bit of a joke, and I am the baby. So I do get people looking out for me more. This is something Cheryl tried to use to her advantage. She put me in the worst position by telling me about the affair because she hoped my siblings would love me too much to hate her if I told them not to. I was so angry at her and at Dad. I didn't want to be the one to tell Mom. I didn't want to see her break down. But I knew I needed to. Mom was furious, more at Cheryl for involving me than the affair at first. My dad defended Cheryl and said she had known me my whole life and should be allowed to confide in me. It turned into a really big fight. My siblings hated them more for trying to involve me too. During the divorce, we all said we wanted to stay with Mom. The judge ruled I had to go to my dad's until I was 14 years old. So for 2 years, I had to go to Dad's house every other week. I made it my mission to make life harder for them that whole time. I refused to go along with the happy family stuff they tried to pull, which only got way worse when Cheryl was pregnant, and they wanted to do a pregnancy reveal with me in it, and I said no. After the baby was born, they thought I would soften and would want to know their baby. I didn't. The last time I was at their house, Cheryl was pregnant again. I turned 14 and stopped going. I refused to answer texts from them either. Can't block my dad until I turn 18. My siblings have them both blocked and they refuse to engage with them. Cheryl and my dad's families are living closer to them now, and both ask about us and why we're not around. Dad's family have tried to reach out and get me to reconcile, but I told them it would not happen, and I hate my dad. Now for an update, Cheryl confronted me while I was at the mall the other day. She followed me into different stores and said I have 2 younger siblings I should know, and that I loved her before, so I should stop punishing her and Dad and start being more respectful. I had enough when I realized she wasn't going to walk away, and I told her she's disgusting and repulsive for trying to use me to her advantage. A 12-year-old kid when she was having an affair with Dad. I told her I would never show her any respect, and she and Dad could explain to their kids why they'll never be part of mine or my siblings' lives. But I'm not going to let them guilt me into anything. To add, she has used Dad's phone a bunch since then, and I got over 100 texts already. Mom told them to stop and bullying a child after all they did makes them look even worse. The response back was, I'm a disrespectful child who should be taught better. Am I the jerk? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Start being more respectful. That's rich coming from her. She had an affair with your dad, then unburdened herself on a 12-year-old child, then tried to use you to get your siblings to accept her. If that wasn't enough, she accosted you in a mall and is bullying you and blowing up your phone. Tell dear old stepmom that you'll show her the amount of respect she's shown you, which is, checks notes, none. Not the jerk. Comment 2. Not the jerk. The problem is their lack of respect for your parents' marriage. Your dad is way out of line to condone Cheryl confiding in / attempting to manipulate a child, trying to force a familial relationship and bullying you. You have no obligation to buy into it. Mom needs to take screenshots of the 100 text messages and ask if you can block your dad now. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So 2 weeks ago, things took a turn I didn't see coming. After Cheryl's confrontation at the mall, I thought things would calm down, but I was wrong. The next day I got a call from my dad's number, but it was Cheryl again. She was crying and begging me to meet her in person to talk things out. I hung up immediately, but the calls kept coming. It was relentless. I ended up blocking my dad's number, even though I knew it wouldn't stop them for long. A few days later, I was walking home from school when I saw Cheryl's car parked outside my house. She was sitting in the driver's seat, looking like a mess. I tried to ignore her and walk past, but she got out and started yelling at me, saying I was ruining her life and that I needed to grow up and take responsibility for my actions. I was so angry and embarrassed that I just ran inside and slammed the door. That night, I told my mom what happened. She was furious and called my dad, demanding that he and Cheryl leave me alone. They got into a huge argument, and my dad accused my mom of turning us kids against him. It was a mess. My mom decided to get a restraining order against Cheryl to keep her away from me and our house. The next day, my dad showed up at my school. He pulled me out of class and took me to his car, saying we needed to talk. I was scared and didn't know what to do. He drove us to a nearby park and started lecturing me about family and forgiveness. He said I was being manipulated by my mom and that I needed to give Cheryl and him a chance to make things right. I told him I didn't want anything to do with them and that they had ruined our family. He got really angry and said I was being selfish and immature. When I got home, I told my mom what happened, and she was livid. She called the police and reported the incident. They said they would look into it, but there wasn't much they could do since my dad still had some parental rights. My mom decided to take things into her own hands and contacted a lawyer to see if we could get those rights revoked. In the meantime, my siblings and I tried to go about our lives as normally as possible. But it was hard with everything going on. My older brother started acting out, getting into trouble at school and staying out late. My sister became really withdrawn and stopped talking to us. It was like our family was falling apart all over again. One night, my mom sat us all down and told us we needed to stick together and support each other. She said we couldn't let Dad and Cheryl's actions tear us apart. It was a tough conversation, but it brought us closer together. We decided to have a family meeting every week to talk about how we were feeling and what we could do to help each other. A few days later, we got a call from the lawyer. He said we had a good case for revoking my dad's parental rights, but it would be a long and difficult process. My mom was determined to see it through, and we all agreed to support her. In the meantime, Cheryl continued to harass me. She would show up at my school, my friends' houses, and even my part-time job. It was like she was obsessed with getting me to forgive her. I was at my breaking point and didn't know how much more I could take. One day I was at work when Cheryl showed up again. She started causing a scene, yelling at me and demanding that I talk to her. My boss had to call the police to get her to leave. I was so embarrassed and felt like I couldn't escape her, no matter where I went. That night I had a long talk with my mom. I told her I couldn't handle the constant harassment anymore and that I was scared for my safety. She hugged me and said she would do everything in her power to protect me. She decided to take some time off work to be with us and make sure we were safe. The next day we went to the police station and filed for a restraining order against my dad as well. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was the only way to keep him and Cheryl away from us. The process was long and stressful, but we finally got the restraining order approved. With the restraining orders in place, things started to calm down a bit. Cheryl and my dad stopped showing up at my school and work, and the constant calls and texts finally stopped. It was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. During one of our family meetings, my sister opened up about how she was feeling. She said she felt like she had lost her dad and didn't know how to cope with it. My brother admitted he was acting out because he was angry and didn't know how to deal with his emotions. It was a tough conversation, but it brought us closer together and helped us understand each other better. As we continued to support each other, things slowly started to get better. My brother stopped getting into trouble at school, and my sister started talking to us again. We were still dealing with the fallout from everything that had happened, but we were stronger as a family because of it. Looking back, I realized that Cheryl and my dad's actions had forced us to make some tough choices. But those choices ultimately brought us closer together. We learned to rely on each other and support one another through the hardest times. It wasn't easy, but we came out stronger in the end. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.